All right, we are back. It's No Apologies on Beck. I've got our guest who has been kind enough to come in tonight, Representative Scott Louser. Is this number 4 for you?
4 or 5.
No, it's not 5. Nobody's 5 yet. We don't, and we're going to have to give a jacket if and when you ever get to 5. So, So Scott, you're the Assistant Majority Leader in the House of Representatives in the state, and that's a job where you have to juggle a lot of stuff. And not only do you have to juggle the administrative things and help the Majority Leader keep the ball rolling, but there's a lot of politics within our House, and there's a lot of juggling there as well.
Yeah.
So some folks, you hear about the conservatives, the far right conservatives in the House. And I found that it was quite interesting when I look on the American Conservative Union's website. So they're a very large national group, and they rank legislators both nationally and statewide within their respective states. They rank legislators according to being conservative. It's not necessarily 100% accurate, of course, but over the course of years, it tends to really play out. And I think I mentioned to you within the last year, and you were surprised. You rank number 3 out of everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that because your name isn't necessarily out there as being one of these outspoken conservatives, it's you, and also you don't have people attacking you because everyone likes you. But I think that probably would surprise a lot of people. And in the order of things, actually, interestingly, was Luke Simons was number 1. I was number 2. That's only because American Conservative Union didn't get it right. And you were number 3. And I find that interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know about that until it was sent to me. I had 2 or 3 people within a day or two send that. And I think there's other groups that rank. It just depends on the bills that they look at and how you vote. I think that if you really wanted to break that down, you would look at sponsorships, co-sponsorships, bills that you carry on the floor beyond just voting, and really look at the bills that make a difference in North Dakota to really determine that score. And I don't know that anybody does that, at least for the state legislature, but I was surprised to see that number, pleasantly surprised. I stand behind all the votes that I took, and I disagreed with their ranking on one of them, and it had to do with gaming, because it was the Gaming Commission responsibilities, and we were looking to legalize sports betting in North Dakota, and that would have been one of the steps, and I voted in favor of that and was ranked. That was a negative score for me.
Yeah. Yeah, see, that's the thing, is it's not perfect.
Right.
And that's why no one should hang their hat on whether they're number 6 versus number 8. That doesn't matter. What matters are you in the top 10 or 20, or are you in the bottom 10 or 20? Right. I mean, that really matters. I looked up literally today because I wanted to see if you were still number 3. Now, they haven't ranked 2021 yet, but for all years given, you're still number 3. But you can look at it where they also put our federal legislature, our U.S. congressional delegation mixed in with the state legislators.
I didn't know you could do that.
I didn't know that until tonight.
So that's why I come on the show.
Yeah. Guess, do you want to, I know you don't want to, do you? You want to guess where our senators and congressmen fall in number?
So they were ranked, they were embedded in our scores?
They were
really?
embedded in our scores. So it's all North Dakota legislators, whether they're federal or state.
Hard to say because the issues they vote on are different than ours.
They are.
So I don't want to guess.
Okay, good squishy answer.
That's the conservative in me? The squishy answer?
Oh, no, that's the politician in you, right?
I would guess, based on that you asking the question, they were not in the top 50%.
Congressman Armstrong was ranked number 22.
Okay.
And so that's not horrible.
Right.
And that's what I would have guessed, is that he'd be the best. Senator Kramer ranked number 59.
Okay.
I would have hoped for better, and I still do, and I think a lot of Senator Kramer's problem is spending. Senator Hoeven, number 73. Number 73. I just find it shocking that for North Dakota, a deep red state, and our senator is ranked number 73.
Yeah, well, as you said on the prior segment, you'd have to look at what is actually being scored, and I think some of the Senate votes that they have to take are probably drastically different than what we do, and a lot of the House bills in Congress don't even make it over to the Senate, but that's a pretty low score. generally that's a pretty low score.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it is. But that was a point of interest. Let me ask you. In your job, I said you do a lot of juggling, and yet you vote very conservatively. There are factions in the House: moderates, which I would call progressives, and conservatives, as a general group. Which group do you think trusts you more?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the group. It's just difficult.
Yeah.
I do feel internally I have a really good working relationship with almost every member of the House. That's my feeling. Maybe they wouldn't say the same. But being in that position, in that capacity, there is politics. There are times you have to take a leadership position, and there are times you have to do certain things that you might not have to do when you're not serving in that role. I don't know. I don't know if I could answer that.
So and the question, I'm not just like throwing things at you. The reason I ask the question is because in your particular situation, there are going to be maybe people that are very, very conservative that will view you with a little bit of skepticism because you're part of the establishment. On the other hand, there will be people that are moderates or part of the establishment that will view you with possible skepticism because you are very open and communicate with the conservatives, and your own record is conservative. So that was the reason, and the fact that you don't really have an answer is probably good. That indicates that there isn't an issue.
Oddly, I didn't know that question was coming. You're the third person that's brought that up to me today in some capacity.
Really?
I had one legislator, I had one lobbyist in conversation today, and now a form of that question from you. I think maybe, I stand by my voting record, but you're right. I mean, if I don't vote a certain way on a given Tuesday, how do they feel on Wednesday? And I guess that's just the nature of the business when you have 79 or 80 people out of 94 in your caucus.
I want to talk about Minot because you guys had some measures that were voted on yesterday.
Yeah.
And all three passed, I understand.
Yeah.
Tell me about those.
Yeah, this was exciting for me. I was the real estate broker that put the deal together to get the building to the Minot Public School System, and then worked for a year to get the bond issue ready to go that was approved by Minot Public Schools. And we had some great success yesterday, and the end result of this proposal is that we will have a second public high school in Minot starting the school year 2024 on the north end of Minot. We will take what is currently Central Campus, the 9 and 12 building, or 9th grade and 10th grade building, and convert that to a third middle school. And then Magic City Campus, which is currently the 11 and 12 grade building, will become 9 through 12 on the south end of town. Minot is one of only 3 school districts in the United States that separate their freshmen and sophomores from their juniors and seniors. And if you go through the school system there, it feels natural, but it's unique, and it's surprising to hear that if you're from somewhere else.
Right.
So this will allow that $84 million on the first question will allow the new building to be modified to be a high school. We'll make modifications to the new middle school, and then some enhancements to the nearly 50-year-old Magic City campus. That was the first question. That passed with nearly 85% yes vote, which was quite surprising.
That's huge.
That is big. The second question was to add a competition pool with seating for 800 spectators and a football stadium to that property. Mm-hmm. And that passed, I want to say it was about 76% yes. And both of those, by the way, needed a 60% margin to pass because it was a property tax question. And then the third question was increasing the bonding capacity from 5% to 10 if they need it. And that passed 75-25.
Interesting. So it's obviously you're in favor, you're a supporter of it. And I start, my starting point with these bonding issues is always with a little bit of skepticism on whether it's stuff that's actually needed.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that, of course, it's increasing property taxes, which is everyone's biggest concern. Clearly, if it's needed, you need it. You need schools. Kids need to be taught. But I'm wondering about this really nice swimming pool you guys just okayed. What's the deal with that?
Well, currently we don't have a full competition pool at Magic City campus. and absolutely no seating in there. And the swim program, of course, the best swim program in the upper Midwest, continuously wins state titles. A huge swim program in Minot, and really nowhere for the kids to swim except that pool. I know that the question is always going to be, well, how much money are you spending, and are you increasing property taxes? I, like you, typically will approach something like that with, my answer is going to be vote no, convince me it's needed, convince me a yes vote is necessary. Same with the bills that we have in the legislature. We have, and aside from the pool, we have class sizes now from kindergarten up through 6th grade consistently of 600 kids. We have a Jim Hill Middle School on the south end of town that has 7 relocatable buildings with 14 classrooms in them right now. And the first lunch group next year is going to start going to lunch at 10:45 because they just have too many kids in that school. We built Eric Ramstead after the flood with room for another 150 kids. That school's already at capacity as well. This was recognized by people that would generally vote no. This was recognized as a need for the Minot, for the whole city, not just the school system or kids.
So my next question then is, what was the turnout for the vote? Because this happened at a very off time.
It did.
And my thought has been these bonding issues, anything that makes property taxes go up, arguably should be put to the general election.
Yeah.
And then that way you have a truly representative sampling of your population.
Sure. The turnout was similar to a turnout that we had a couple of years ago when we did a bonding question, around 6,000 voters in a city that's much larger than that. In the 2000, it was about 8 years ago, we had a bond issue that failed, and the turnout for that one was a little over 8,000. So the turnout this year was lower than expected, but the margin of victory was much higher than expected, if you call it a margin of victory.
Sure.
And there was early voting for a week. It started on Monday last week, so Monday through Friday, and then again on Monday. They obviously allowed absentee voting, so people had opportunity to vote even if they weren't in town. But the turnout was lower than it was when we had a failed bond issue in the past.
Right. So you, in your opinion, the people of Minot all were aware that this was up. If they had a concern with it, they had the opportunity to vote.
I can't say that everybody was aware of it. There were 3 public open houses at the building. The superintendent of the school system, Dr. Mark Vollmer, did 80 face-to-face visits with interest groups. They had focus groups set up. They even had a focus group set up with high school kids to see what they would like out of a new school. They had community leaders, teachers, and just a number of forums that were held. This was a unique situation. You didn't see a yard sign, you didn't see a billboard, you didn't see window clings saying vote yes or vote no or it's for the kids. This was a shoestring budget. The campaign budget, I think, was under $15,000.
Wow.
There wasn't TV ads, there wasn't radio ads, but there was also no organized opposition. It was a very uniquely run campaign and refreshing to have a vote take place where you're not bombarded with the advertising that you and I usually do for campaigns.
Right. That would seem to suggest to me that maybe it was needed, and that there wasn't going to be this mounted opposition, and therefore there wasn't the need to have a well-funded campaign in favor. So perhaps that's right. It's always shocking to me when people vote to increase their property taxes.
It is, and it's going to put pressure on you and I and the rest of the legislature should we return in whatever year we would be going back, if we're fortunate enough to be there, to find ways to reduce the property tax burden for everybody in North Dakota. I think that's going to be the expectation of Minot, which is a dichotomy here because they just voted to raise their taxes, but they saw the need for it and they saw the purpose.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's something maybe we should talk about here yet tonight a little bit, because the property tax issue, always the number one issue on people's minds, citizens' minds. The legislature did something about it, allegedly, but it didn't do a damn thing, and that was way back. I mean, it started before I got there in 2011, I think, maybe even 2009, but 2013, the thought was, hey, we already started this, we should continue. And it's like, this is not good. This is not good policy, and we're going to get bit in the butt because the locals are going to backfill, which they did. So Yeah, let's talk about that in our next segment. I know that the majority leader currently, Rich Wardner, is very much in favor of trying to offer additional property tax relief, but not in the form that we've done before, which is basically just a buy down, more in the form of we're taking school education, K-12 education, off the table, away from property taxes. The state will fund that, which they should anyway according to the Constitution, and it'll be that much less than that the locals need to fund.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, on the last day of special session, Majority Leader Wardner did mention that on the last vote on the floor of the Senate, that's what he really hopes to see happening in the next session. And his speech, his floor speech, had to do with the income tax, earned income tax, the tax credit that we gave at the end of the special session. And he was advocating for additional property tax relief with the $200 and some million income tax relief that we gave during session.
So let's talk property tax a little more. And just for our viewers, I want them to be clear. Property taxes, in essence, have gone up significantly over the past 10 years. Back in 2009, but also definitely in 11, definitely in 13, and I think more in 15, what the legislators heard was from their constituents, we hate property taxes. And so then what we did was we said, hey, great, what we're going to do is buy down some of those mills. In other words, we're going to buy down some of your responsibility of property tax. That should make your property tax bill lower. And it did to a limited degree and for a very limited period of time. And of course, the nature of things, I always say it's very, very simple. If you subsidize something, you get more of it. If you tax something, you get less of it. So we subsidized the revenue, the revenue requirements of the cities and counties.
Right.
And so that allowed them to increase it. And so all of the gain that we theoretically made has been lost. And so now the citizens of North Dakota are paying what they always would have anyway with the increases in property tax, and also the tax money they're paying to the state is going down to pay the property taxes that were temporarily brought down. Tell me and tell our viewers how what Wardner is proposing, what perhaps you're proposing, is different, and how it would prevent the cities and counties from just upping and making up the difference and having the opportunity to take more money.
Well, I can't say necessarily what Senator Wardner is fully proposing. I only heard what he said on the floor. One of the things that I think is prevailing that would make sense to me, coming from not as a legislator but as a real estate broker, is instead of having mills applied to your property value, we should have a percentage and just say the percentage, X percent of your property value would go towards your city property taxes, your county, the schools, whatever political subdivision is charging the tax. It's very difficult and it's hard to read when we're talking mills and then assessed value and applying that to a budget. And the assessed value is based on market value of the property. That's not just an arbitrary thing. State law says you have to be within the property value that you're assessed has to be within 5% of fair market value. If you don't agree with that, you can apply for an appraisal and try to fight your valuation. But if we just applied a percentage, then it would be much easier to understand if your property taxes went up, did the percentage go up or did the property value go up? Right now, a shell game can be played with the mills. What Senator Wardner had proposed was taking the maximum allowable mills that the school districts can charge from 70 down to 20. Now, what if we did 70 down to 0?
Right.
And could the state do that? Well, certainly if we can go from 70 to 20, and it is a numbers game, but if we could take it from 70 to 0, that would be similar to a bill that I proposed about 8 years ago in a different way, saying that the state should be paying for education for K through 12.
Right. And it is in the Constitution. Would you agree?
It's in, yeah, and we hear that every 2 years. That's argued. It's in the Constitution.
And yeah, we're not following the Constitution by having local property taxes pay for K-12 education. So tell me, my thought is we should just get rid of the property tax. Now, I know that Senator Wardner's primary, at least most vocal objection to that is that it takes power away from the locals. But when I look, we already are sending money to the locals to the tune of $2 billion a year, I think it is. And so you add in an extra $1 billion. How does that take power away from the locals? And rather than answer that, just tell me, do you agree with that? And then, if so, how?
Do I agree with it takes power away from the locals?
Yeah, do you agree that we cannot eliminate the property tax because that would take power away from the locals and their spending?
No, I think that if you eliminated the property tax, you just have what you would consider a block grant from the prior year's budget.
Right.
And then an inflator, if the state is able to do it, a 2% inflator, as we've done with salaries. Say last year's budget was 200 million, this year's budget is 204 million. And that's what the state would be obligated to pay if we did that.
Right.
I think that discussion should go beyond just philosophical and actually come up with some mathematical plans in the interim to introduce a bill that would make sense in the session. We study property taxes every interim. We study taxes all the time.
Right.
I don't know that we've had that deep of a dive to say this is actually how it would work. Where would the money come from?
Well, I mean, where would the money come from? You know, that's the question. The answer is we have the money's sitting there. Where would it come from? It would come from what we're getting now for revenue, because we don't need to be spending all that. But it's interesting because it would have to be it would be a vote in the legislature to simply put it on the ballot. I guess you could say we're taking property taxes to zero, but really, to me, that's useless. You need to abolish property taxes in the Constitution.
Yeah, taking it to zero, interesting that you bring that up. I also had a bill to take the income tax to zero.
I remember.
And sure would like to see that happen. That doesn't eliminate the tax, it just takes it to zero. The tax, you know, the Century Code still references the income tax and all the categories but the rate is zero. And so the effectiveness is no income tax. That doesn't eliminate the income tax because a future legislature could raise it.
Right. Well, I think that most of our viewers would agree that we could easily eliminate one of them, and that we should just do it, get off the pot, stand for something. I understand in order to pass, it's easier to take it to zero.
Right.
But you know, some of the folks that are in power or have been in power are moving out. And they've been the ones that have been most resistant because they've always wanted that ability to have more revenue. As they're moving out, we have new people coming in. Maybe it's time to look a little more at actually abolishing income tax or abolishing property tax.
Well, that's something that I think every 2 years we have that discussion, that debate on whether it's philosophical or it's actually policy. We do hear often, well, you know, throw the bums out and get somebody new and get fresh blood, you know, those terms that you hear often. In 2016, we had 28 freshmen come into the House legislature, 27 Republicans and 1 Democrat came in that year. That's 1/3 of the House that turned over. Should the same thing happen in 2022, maybe that discussion picks up steam.
Scott, we're talking about property tax. And then we kind of segued over to what's happening, and that could abolishing income tax or property tax actually be a reality in the next 2 years or 4 years because of legislative changes. This next one, because of redistricting coming up, I think my understanding is that 99 out of the 141 seats are up for election.
Right. Yeah, I verified that today. It is 99.
Okay.
And the reason that is some of the even number districts had significant enough of a change that would require the voters in that district to elect, whether it's an incumbent or somebody new, but there was enough of a change in the number of even number districts that they're on the ballot again.
Right. So folks, every other year, typically you would have 70 legislators roughly up for election. So this year it's 99, a lot more than usual, again, because of the new census, redistricting, and all of that. So there's a lot of opportunity. There is an interesting sort of political skirmish that's going to happen, as it always does, between people of different political ideologies. And we're not talking Republicans versus Democrats, we're talking within the Republican Party, because the Republicans have a hegemony in North Dakota. It's a one-party state. And so both factions are going to be strategizing and wargaming and trying to pick up those seats. What thoughts do you have when it comes to that, when it comes to an opportunity for people who have become more politically aware in the last 2 years to 4 years to 6 years to say, hey, is this the right time to throw my hat in the ring?
Well, and I would say it's beyond just both sides. There could be 3 or 4 or 5 potential candidates looking for the nomination on the Republican side of a ticket
Yep.
in a given district. And our district organizations are different. So what are the rules within the district? Do you need to be a member of the district party by potentially paying dues for a given time period? Do you have to have lived in the district so long? There's a number of different things that the district will organize to say, this is our process, and this is how you would follow it. My suggestion for anybody that's interested in running is get a hold of your district chair and find out what those rules are so that you can start playing by those rules in December or January, long before the time would come, potentially in March, generally is when those district conventions are. Talk to the district leadership and get your course mapped out to compete for one of those positions. I think there's going to be more candidates on the Republican side than the Democrat side. That's generally the case in North Dakota. Without voter registration, you might end up going to the primary in June, and because it's not over at the convention level, the nominee would be, or the candidate would be named at the primary, and there could be multiple candidates on the Republican side in the primary in June.
You know, that a little going on tangent here. On Monday night, I was talking with the chair of the state Democrat Party.
Okay.
His position was that they don't officially endorse having Democrats cross over in the primary, but really, in effect, it's an open primary, so anybody can vote. Typically, in most states, you're a registered Republican, you're a registered Democrat, or whatever other party you might be, and then you need to stay in your lane. In North Dakota, let's say that there's an ultra-conservative running against an establishment type. All the Democrats can cross over and vote for the establishment type to be the Republican nominee to move on to the general election. Do you support North Dakota moving to being a registering state?
Registering for the party or
For the
registering
party.
to vote?
For the party.
Well, if you registered for the party, that would come with the ability to change your registration likely right before the primary, which I think you can do in many states. So if there isn't any contested races in your party and you still want to go spoil the other side, I think you would be able to change your registration and do that. When you said stay in your lane, you currently have to stay in your lane on the ballot.
Yes. You can just pick whatever lane you want.
Correct. But because there isn't oftentimes a contested race in the Democrat Party on the ballot, top to bottom, not just in the district, but statewide, that opportunity presents itself to cross over into the Republican primary and potentially spoil it. I just don't see the numbers being significant enough to impact an election. But I've been wrong before. I mean, I obviously it could happen. It'd have to be very organized to do.
Well, I mentioned to the guest on Monday, I think by my calculations about 20,000 Democrats voted for Burgum in the primary.
Yeah, that could be. If you look at it as a voter or as a candidate, if you registered by party, our campaigning would be more targeted as legislators. You would receive likely more mail from the people or more direct campaigning from the people of your party and much less from the opposition parties. It would make it easier for us to campaign, certainly.
Yep.
It would be easier for us to identify who our likely voters would be as candidates. So there's a lot of merit to it. There's downside, of course, but if we want to make the primary as I don't want to say secure, but have those results be genuine, that would be the easy and logical first step.
Right. So for folks that are watching, and if they're intrigued and they're now, perking up their ears at opportunities to run for a seat, you've indicated they should contact their district chairs, find out what's going on, how do you become a member, and the whole idea being that you work within the district to become an endorsed candidate. I've heard that some districts may not have endorsing conventions, in which case then, actually, whether or not they have endorsing conventions, people could elect to go straight to the primary. They need to gather, is it 350 signatures?
It's slightly up this year. I think it's close to 350.
Okay.
Yep.
So gather 350 signatures, boom, you're on the primary ballot. That's the other way to go.
Right, and so that's the question that you'd ask the district. What are the rules of the district? How is this gonna work this time around? Some districts might do that. They might go straight to the primary and not have a nominating convention. We had a bill last session, I had an amendment in the Secretary of State's, the voter bill, that would enumerate on the ballot in the primary if you were the nominee for the party. And that didn't make it all the way through. That amendment got taken out and stripped out of that bill. So when you look at the primary ballot, whether it's Republican or Democrat, it won't say incumbent and it won't say endorsed candidate. So it really does provide an opportunity if they want to go out and get signatures and they're running against an endorsed incumbent.
Yep.
It doesn't say that on the ballot. They're going to have name recognition, but a lot of effort and hard work, you certainly could overcome that if you were determined to do so.
So the opportunity is there. You don't have to be entrenched in the game. The opportunity is there for any person to step up and try to become part of a change.
It's something I'm very proud of in North Dakota, that we give those opportunities, and we are very, relative to other states, very transparent and provide opportunities. You don't have to be a member of a club in order to get your name on the ballot. You just have to work hard and have a vision and a message.
All right. In our last minute here, what are your plans, or last 30 seconds, what are your plans as far as, do you see yourself continuing on in leadership in the Republican Party in the House?
I haven't made that determination yet. I just don't know. A lot of things going on, personal life and professionally, that are going to be a priority for me. I would hope people would respect and appreciate that. Sure. If I can resolve those issues, and I find that I'm ready to come back, I will make that announcement to my district first, good. And well, outside of my company and my family. And should I come back in the legislature and be fortunate enough to win re-election, I would certainly run for leadership again.